Hey, I'm Victor Margiotta, and this is the Community Show. We are at the Lincoln Depot Museum in beautiful Peekskill, New York, on the bank of the east side of the Hudson River, right next to Hudson River Bay. And very thrilled to have John Testa on the show to talk about the museum, to talk about a little history. But I can't help but first asking, how are the grandkids?
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And thanks for having me on the show
this is
again. It's
awesome.
always a pleasure. I appreciate the question. Yes, my two grandchildren are doing wonderful, and we're looking forward to getting together for the holidays. And nothing beats having the grandchildren and then being retired. So it's all good.
So I just had a gentleman on the show, Zedek Ullman, who pulls boats out of the Hudson. And, I went online and looked at the Hudson River and started looking at the history, and oh my God, it's
Yes.
unbelievable.
Oh,
Really
yes.
is. And we didn't get to talk about the history. So when I got home, the first thing I did was message you and say, yo, you're coming on the show. We're going to talk about the Hudson River. And
That's
then you
fine.
said it's the 10-year anniversary of the depot. So I'm very easy. So let's talk about
Well,
that.
the Hudson River obviously has been very historic for Peekskill, back to the 1600s, the time of Henry Hudson and Jan Peek, which is how Peekskill got its name. So you can get into that if you'd like to, right through to when Lincoln came by. As you mentioned, the Lincoln Depot Museum is here. We celebrate Abraham Lincoln and the Civil War and New York's contribution to both the Civil War and to Lincoln. And a lot of people don't realize how instrumental New York was and how instrumental people from the Peekskill area were and what happened around here. So for 2024 will be our 10th anniversary of this museum being open, which is kind of hard to believe. And just this year's 20 years since we obtained the property and the building, and then we went through the whole process of restoring it, creating the museum, having the visitor center built, and having the whole historic site complete. So we're really, really excited about next year, and we're hoping that it's even a better year than this year, which was our best year so far, thank God. So we're ready to go.
Mention some of the volunteers that helped you in the beginning, just so we can thank them for all the
Well, we should thank the members of the Peekskill Council at the time who supported the project, Lincoln Society and Peekskill, a lot of members of this Lincoln Society. I was president at the time as well, and they were very much behind the project. And we got support from our local elected officials at the time. And then obviously we had the county, Andy Spano, who was the county executive at the time, liked the idea, helped us with a grant to obtain the property through the county. And then, of course, Governor Pataki, who was also from Peekskill, and the mayor, and whose family was very historic here in Peekskill.
I just saw George. He was in the restaurant. Hi, George.
Yeah. So I didn't have to explain all the history to him, which helped, but he listened and he understood our plan when I was mayor, as well as to revitalize the riverfront area. It was part of our whole revitalization process that we were putting together in Peekskill. So he helped us with the grants to really tie it all together. The museum was the centerpiece of that, and without him, obviously we would not be here.
Well, it came out beautiful.
Yeah,
It
thank you.
really, you had to hire an architect.
We had professional architect, and we received an architectural award for the design of the museum. We had to have professional curators from New York City we hired who had done previous museums. So we got the best of the best, and we were able, thanks to the grant, to do that. And everything in here, all our displays are custom made for us. We have members of our board, Brian Kaplan, who's a member of our board, a local attorney. He recently moved to Croton from Portland. And a lot of this is part of his collection. Some of it's part of my collection. We have Kathy Bazzani, who was on the council and also was on the board, and also big with the Lincoln Society, as well as Barbara Karasiotis, another person who was from Peekskill who was very, very involved. We have Jeff Sweet, whose family was doctors in town, and he was very instrumental. He's on the board, as well as a person named Andrew Amon, who is a Purple Heart recipient, veteran who is from Yorktown is on our board. We have Paul Martin III, who's an artist, and some of you see some of his art in here.
Yeah.
Very big historian in his own right is on the board. And we have someone new to the board, Michael Bennett, who is our very recent board member. So we have previous board members I should mention, General Patrick Garvey, who passed away a couple of years ago, was instrumental in helping us get off the ground. So he was a big part of it as well.
Excellent. So talk about the route that he took and the purpose of it.
Abraham Lincoln, you're
Yes,
talking about.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, once he was elected, Abraham Lincoln had to get from his home in Springfield, Illinois. This was 1861, right, in February. He left home and he had to get to Washington, D.C., and the way to get there was by train. So he left, and on February 19th, 1861, he landed in Peekskill. He stopped in various places along the way. Most places they just kind of went through. A couple places they stopped, obviously, in Albany and some of the bigger cities, but Peekskill was the only city and location in Westchester County that he stopped. Wow. Got off the train to speak. That was because he had a friend in Peekskill who was a local lawyer, William Nelson, who was in Congress with Lincoln. Lincoln spent a couple of years in Congress in the late 1850s, and he was a fellow congressman with Lincoln, got to know him.
Cool.
And he had written him and asked him if he would stop here on his way, and he did. Another person, Chauncey Depew, who was a young lawyer just out of Yale, who was a very big and instrumental supporter of Lincoln in this area. So he was part of it as well. So it was an interesting time for us. When he stopped, people as far away as Connecticut came. There were a couple thousand people here. He didn't stay long. He made a speech and off he went to the next place, but it's been in Peekskill lore ever since. And it was the reason that the Lincoln Society in Peekskill was formed, the longest continually active Lincoln Society in the United States. And the ideals of Lincoln, the history of what happened has been kept alive all these years. And we're so proud to now have this museum, which not only is about Lincoln, but as I said, New York and the Civil War and the local contributors to that.
So while you mentioned the war, you did reenactments for a long time.
I am a reenactor. I was a Revolutionary War reenactor. I started when I was 12 years old with my older brother, Joe. So I was very much into the Revolutionary War period. As an adult, I still at times do participate in that, but I obviously concentrated on the Civil War era. Peekskill has rich history in both. We have Fort Hill right outside of our doors here. Look up, you see Fort Hill, which is a big Revolutionary War site. But here we are in the Civil War era museum. And I always used to say about Peekskill is it's the one place where you can have a very instrumental location in very big historical moments for Peekskill. We had Washington here. We had Alexander Hamilton stayed here in Peekskill. Obviously, Lincoln came here. We had FDR came to Peekskill. If you really look into the history of Peekskill, it seems like it's the center of the spoke of a lot of things. And we just are glad to be able to just keep that little bit alive that we can for
it's so
that
important
era.
to be proud of,
Yes,
to
absolutely.
be part of. It's so important.
So many people move here and don't realize how historic it really is.
It's gorgeous. So continue the train ride.
Okay.
There was parts where he had to take the train and move it off.
Yeah, well, the train system wasn't one continually connected train system. So he would be in segments like maybe from Springfield going east. It would go as far as a certain point. Then it would transfer to a different rail system, and they would have to move his train to that rail system. Sometimes a little bit of a distance, so it took a while. And then finally, once he got to Albany, you can come straight down and to New York City, and then he had to switch again. But there were larger segments than others, but it was not an easy trip. But he did it pretty quickly. And again, stopping in Peekskill was a treat because it did not happen. Actually, we have one of the original train schedules here at one of our displays of his unfortunate funeral train, because after he was assassinated, the train came back the same exact route that when he went down. And again, it stopped in Peekskill for 10 minutes. The mourners were here. It was a very somber time, but we are proud that we were selected also on the way back to have the train stop.
Yeah. So his greatest accomplishment was?
Well, probably, there's probably a few of them, but I would probably have to say keeping the Union together. He sacrificed obviously everything for that, but he sacrificed leading up to his assassination. He sacrificed his health. He sacrificed a lot of the lives of a lot of people who were part and believed in his belief to keep the Union together, prevent slavery from continuing, which was a very important part of that, and it evolved into the centerpiece for the war. After the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, it became really the centerpiece of the war, and everyone recognized that. So that probably is his biggest accomplishment and what he's known for. Then he was martyred for it, obviously, because there were still some who did not agree with his thoughts on that.
So today's date is November 12th, and when can we come here? It's almost coming to a
Oh, yes. Well, we're open to the public every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 1 to 4. Our season usually begins in late April, early May, and it goes all the way to usually the weekend before Thanksgiving, which will be this coming weekend.
Yes.
The 18th, 19th will be the last weekend that will be open to the general public on the weekends. But we continually all year round have events. So if someone is interested in coming, we have lectures, we have authors come, we have reenactors come from time to time. We have all kinds of things going on here. We want to make this an educational center for a lot of things. And so we have new this year was something called First Saturdays. The first Saturday of every month, someone would come and we would give a lecture on a book or a topic of the Civil War or other topics even outside of the Civil War. We have movies that we show. We have we have what's called Collector's Corner. Once a month, someone who collects something historic. We had someone with a GAR collection. Someone is coming this coming weekend with vintage Thanksgiving postcard collection.
Oh, wow.
And they will just set up in the museum. So if you come to the museum, you can also see that display for that weekend. So that is all year round. But if you go to our website, LincolnDepotMuseum.org, you will see that schedule of all those events. We have an email blast that you can sign up for on our website, and then you'll get an email warning you and alerting you of all the things coming up.
Right.
So if you want to participate and learn more about next year, we have a lot planned for next year. Our 10th anniversary, we're still in the developmental stages of that.
Yeah.
We will continue the first Saturday with the lectures, and we have a lot of important people wanting to get involved with that. So we're going to have some wonderful lectures next year and some other events commemorating our 10th anniversary. So look for that, and we hope to see you at the museum. That would be wonderful.
I'm coming for sure.
Great.
This is actually my first time in here. I mean, I drive by it, but
Yes.
So we have a large projector with a large screen, and I
Yes.
guess the presenters seem to like it.
Oh yeah, it's a gigantic screen, and the projector is a very high resolution. So most lecturers, when they go around to different places to give their speeches or talks, there's various systems that are in place depending on where they are. Some are used to just carrying their own setup, a little you would have in your home, like a screen that would go on a tripod, and a little projector that you hook up to your computer. But we have a full professional system here, and we also show movies. We have a sound system, so you get a real experience when you come here and see one of our programs. We also have programs in the visitor center. We have a second building, by the way, that's been now 4 years that we've had. And that lets us have offices space and more display space, and also a small place to do presentations that we concentrate outside of the Civil War era. Sometimes we've had Vietnam era presentations, World War II, Korea, and other historic happenings, we have them in the visitor center. 19th century topics, we only have in the museum.
Okay. We keep mentioning the word war, so
Yeah.
I actually, looked up the history of war and was reading about it, and they want to do psychological studies, and then they studied animals and they studied children, and I mean, and then today you still have war. What
Yeah.
what do you think is the root cause of war?
The root cause of war. Well, there can be a lot of things. It could be, unfortunately, religious based, as we're seeing now. It can be just philosophical, like the Civil War was just about slavery, opposition of slavery, and how people are treated, and how they're thought of by different groups of people. It can be, it could be planned. It could be something that just like in World War II, there could, like when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, it just happened because they felt that they needed to
Make a statement.
make a statement to the United States. That had a lot to do with steel making and steel commerce and other things. But there's all different reasons that war starts.
Yeah.
None of them are good,
No.
and that should never happen. But we mention war only because it defines a period of time. You don't really, Civil War, obviously, there's a lot to talk about, but it's an 1860s era. If you talk about World War I, you're talking about the 1918 type 1920s or teens and up into the 20s. If you talk World War, II, you're talking about the 40s, 42 up to the 50s, then Korean War. So it's an era of time that we're really talking about, and that's how we think about time probably with our families. We all have members of our families involved in a lot of these conflicts.
Yeah.
Vietnam was the one I grew up with,
Me too.
and living next to Peekskill Military Academy, I knew a lot of the cadets there who ended up going to Vietnam, and some did not return. So it's just the way we divide our history up, I guess, these days. But
And we did just celebrate Veterans Day, so we
Yes,
want to
absolutely.
thank our veterans for their service.
absolutely, and more people should recognize them all year round, not just on Veterans Day. And it's something that you really have to think about why we're here today, able to do this because of what people did, even as far back as the Civil War. If you look at it, we could be a very different world right now if we didn't have people willing to put their lives on the line in foreign countries. The United States has the most fallen soldiers buried in foreign countries than any country in the world. So the United States has sacrificed a lot of lives for a lot of different areas of the world, and it should be recognized.
For sure.
And in this, if I may add, in this area here, Peekskill, at the time of the Civil War, was really a village in the town of Cortland Town, as it was called. So the history of and the record keeping of that period of time, it wasn't the city of Peekskill, it was the village of Peekskill. So everything was by the town of Cortland. So there was about between close to 800 residents of Cortland, Peekskill being one of them, that were involved in the Civil War. So it's very significant for our area.
Yeah. And it's true. I mean, the computer and a lot of technology that we've developed was because of war, because they
A lot of
developed
things, computers, technology, food, materials. A lot of it was war. A lot of it was space flight. A lot of things that we use every day was at one time developed because of a war. Radar, everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So everything's got a good side
Yeah.
and a bad side.
Yeah. Well, you gotta make sure you take advantage of and make.
But if
something
everybody
good out
was
of it.
educated and everybody was empathetic to other people, and we were all happy and content, and we're able to get along, it seems like money and power is a big issue too.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who fan the flames and cause the conflicts. As little ones become big ones pretty fast sometimes. So you just got to realize that you got to step back sometimes and realize that maybe it isn't that important as you may originally thought.
Right.
You know.
So talk about some of the artwork. It's beautiful.
Oh yeah, well, one of our board members, Paul Martin, he is a very good artist, and he has some of his work hanging in here. He's very much into Gettysburg, which is a whole story in itself. And he, if you ever went to Gettysburg or go to Gettysburg, you will notice that throughout the area they have where different units from different states were stationed during the battle, and there are monuments to those various units. And he created artwork of each one of those areas, and that's what you see here in the museum.
And you guys were able to get the big pictures, the
These
portraits.
paintings, yes,
Yeah.
we have paintings of 4 generals from the Civil War, Union generals. Right after the Civil War, there was a organization formed called the Grand Army of the Republic, the GAR, which was the forerunner to the veterans groups we know today, American Legion and such. And so these lodges would have their own set of veterans from that area, and they would have officers, and they would do events. And they had halls, and they would decorate their halls with different artwork or whatever else they might have for that area. And these 4 paintings are very, very large. We were able to obtain them in an auction from an auction house, and they originally came out of a GAR office lodge in Buffalo, New York.
Wow.
Yeah, so we were lucky to get them, and we don't know who the artist was, but he or she was very good, and they really set a tone in our museum.
Oh, they're
here.
beautiful. They really are nice. So do you open up? Do you run the
Personally?
place? Yeah.
Well, we're all volunteer, so I'm one of the volunteers. I spend
Okay.
a lot of time here,
All right.
even though I'm retired, but
Well, you
it's
can
great.
never retire from volunteering.
No, it gives me more time to be here. So whatever needs to be done, I'm here to do it. We open up, and we do have volunteer docents who've gotten involved. People really have fallen in love with the museum and wanted to get involved. We do hire high school age kids to help us at the desk, as reception people. We try to hire, teenagers from the local high schools.
Yeah.
And but all the big work is done by volunteers. Yeah, the
that's
board
huge.
members are mainly the volunteers that do it.
You can't do anything without money. So what
Yes.
are some ways that we generate money here?
Well, we do have events, like I mentioned. We do have sponsors. We do have some local businesses, and we're going to be looking to do more this coming year for our 10th anniversary.
Yep.
We do have individuals who support us, and so it's an ongoing process. Anyone who has a nonprofit or even runs a for-profit business, you have to bring the revenue in to pay the bills. So even though we got some substantial grants to create the space, we need to raise the money to for the overhead and the operational costs. So that's an ongoing thing, and we welcome any help we can get in those regards, with donations or pointing us toward grants. We do whatever we have to do.
Excellent. Now, if somebody did want to volunteer, how would they?
Well, they can send an email. It's Lincoln Depot FDN @gmail.com is our email address, where you can contact through the website. You can contact us directly through the website, and then we'll discuss what you're interested in and how we can get you involved. We're always looking for people who want to get involved.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Absolutely.
So I couldn't help reading about Mary, his wife.
Okay.
I guess she was only 5'2".
She was short.
Yeah, and he was what, 6'8"?
6'4".
Oh, 6'4". So there was a little height difference there, but I guess she grew up with money, and she was in a well-off family.
Her family was a Southern family, which caused a little controversy at the beginning. But she fell in love. They fell in love, and whatever, the rest is history, as they say.
Sure.
They had their ups and downs, as many have read about and talked about. But she stood by him the whole time, and they stood by each other.
Yeah.
And luckily, Robert, the oldest son, survived The younger ones did not.
Yeah, you were saying
yeah.
how they might have passed.
Yeah, well, there's different diseases that would come by, through the hygiene of the time was not really what it should have been,
Yeah.
and other things.
Well,
Drinking
even during
water
the
was
war.
contaminated by, we know today if you have a well and a septic, you have to
got
make
it.
sure one is in a certain place compared to the other, so one doesn't contaminate. So the septic does not contaminate the well, and so that was something that affected a lot of people back
yeah.
at that time.
Just the need for peroxide would have
Yes.
saved a lot of lives.
The whole thing about the health of the children and the hygiene I mentioned, why it's so important today. We have the sewer treatment plants. Peekskill has one, and there's a few throughout the county, and that was able to get the homes in the area of that system, so they
Yeah.
get rid of the septic, so you would have less contaminated water. Water would be more drinkable and healthier, and that's something we learned as time went on, and that's why it's important that we have that, even though sometimes if you live near it, it doesn't smell so great.
Yeah.
But those
an
things that can
important
be
thing.
worked on, but it is an important part of all communities to have treatment plants,
Yeah.
believe it or not.
And I read that she was under the microscope constantly. When she had the parties at the White House, she was a little extravagant. And because she was raised with money.
She knew how to spend money. She knew how to redecorate and buy fancy clothes, to the consternation of the Congress, which caused some problems for her husband. But she did what she did, and they
But
They
she
got
set a
through it.
tone too
Yeah.
for elegance and
She had her ways, put it that way. She did.
and also when you're under the microscope, you can't please everybody. There's no way. And there's some things that you have to do, because they need to be done. Like this place had a little opposition.
Well, as someone who has been elected in positions, that you definitely cannot please everyone.
That's correct.
And there was always opposition, as you mentioned, there was opposition to this project. Most of it was not based on fact, but I think many of the people who were questioning it at one time, now when they see it done and they see what we've been able to do, they realize now, because some people can vision better than others, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And some people need to see to be proven, and they have. So we're happy that.
Well, I want to thank you so much. This is beautiful, and it's such a great thing.
Thanks for deciding to come here and selecting me to be on the show again. Appreciate it.
It's awesome. Thank you so much for all the work you do, and this is unbelievable.
We encourage people to stop down. Again, we even do private showings if you have a small group of people of 5 or more, and say you have family coming in for a couple of days, and you give us a call or an email, and we'll let you come in, and we'll have a private showing for you when we're not open. We do that for a lot of groups. We've had quite a number of private groups come in and do tours. We even have a tour company now that's going to be coming, and we had to come in actually from Massachusetts this year, and so they loved it so much they're going to be coming back every year.
Excellent.
So we once people come, they love it and they come back. So you just got to get you here the first time sometimes.
That's right. Well, I'm Victor Margiotta. This is the Community Show. Thanks for watching, and please come and see.